Okay, I want to try and film this. I might be losing daylight, which makes it a bad idea to be starting filming now, but I want to give it a go. I have a few hours of the house to myself, which means that I won't be whispering. I should have, you know, the confidence to speak at a normal register or a louder register than I'm usually speaking, because I don't know, I get nervous. But today, if I can manage it, I'm gonna film for you my mental health story. This video might be kind of long. I'm imagining if you've seen videos like this before, you'll know a lot of them end up being really long. I'll try not to make it ages and ages, not least because then I'll have to edit that, but also because I don't know if I can hold your attention for that long. But, you know, I guess I have a story and I have suffered with mental health issues, and even though it might not be as dramatic as some other people's stories, every story is a story worth telling, and it can help anybody out there to know that their experience is valid, no matter what's happened in their experience with mental illness. If they relate to how it's been for me, then it might make them feel less alone. They don't need to let it get to an even worse place than it's already been for it to be worth getting help for. Or I want people to know that no matter what's happened in your journey and what you've been through, you're always worth fighting for and fighting against the things that you've struggled with, you know? No matter what point you've gotten to. Whether you've been to rock bottom, whether you thought you were at rock bottom and you broke through even further, whether you've never gotten help for your mental health, whether you have, no matter what's happened to you, it's still important and it's still valid. You deserve help. Nobody deserves to go through any of this stuff. I guess the other important thing to say before I start would be that I suppose we need a trigger warning just in case. Of course, I wouldn't ever talk about anything that was too graphic or detailed so as to avoid being triggering, but I know that the general discussion of things like this can be triggering anyway, so I wouldn't want someone to come to this video and see it and be triggered and have it impact them in a negative way, when of course that's 100% not my intention at all. I want to put this out there to help people, as I know other people having put out their mental health story has helped me. Yeah, I just wouldn't ever want it to be something that negatively impacts someone. So if you are worried about being triggered by the discussion of depression, anxiety, self-harm or eating disorders, then I would click off and not watch this if you're worried at all, even the tiniest bit, because it just isn't worth it for that to happen for you, okay? I don't want you to be triggered, I want you to be safe, and yeah, please just look after yourself if you're concerned before watching something like this. I suppose we'll begin. So I guess for a bit of background, when I was very, very little, quite a happy little bubbly kid, and I would babble to strangers on the street. You know, I was an innocent small child, yeah, and I was happy and everything was great. My home life has always been really, really good in the sense that I have two very loving parents, awesome siblings. Obviously, as siblings do, we didn't always get along, everything wasn't always perfect, but as home lives go, I know I was very, very fortunate to have the situation that I did. Yeah, I was always supported in all ways that kids need to be supported. But yeah, as I started through school, in like primary school, I guess I was quite a tomboy really. I hung out with all the boys more than anything else. I played weird games with them. Yeah, I was just a nerdy little kid, like one of the brighter ones. I enjoyed learning, I wore glasses, I liked to help people with their work. Yeah, and I hung out with more boys than I did girls. That's just who I was as a kid at that age. Yeah, up until then, I guess throughout primary school I was quite comfortable and confident in who I was. I didn't have very many worries. I was just a very, very normal kid, but like a weird kid, but in terms of like the situation, like I was normal. I didn't have any out of the ordinary worries in life, you know. I played, I that was it really. Then when I went to secondary school is, I guess, the point where I became more of a quiet child at that point. Like I said, up until this point I'd been quite confident and I would talk to strangers. I was very heavily involved in like my dance school, and that was like a big part of my life in like growing up. And between the ages of like 7 and 11 or whatever, when I was still at primary school, I used to quite happily like sing and act and dance front and centre in like the dance school shows and everything like that, and I was fairly happy doing that. It didn't bother me in the slightest. But then, like I said, I got to secondary school and became much more of a quiet kid, because being 11 or so, exposed to 16-year-olds and in between of course, being a kid with glasses and weird curly hair, I was small, I had, I guess, a little puppy fat on me. Yeah, I wasn't severely bullied. I wouldn't say, like, if people ask me, I've never really said that I was like seriously bullied, but I was picked on by other kids a fair bit for the things that made me different. I enjoyed being involved in school and my classes, and I liked just getting my head down and doing the work, but of course the more outgoing kids and the ones that would cause more of a ruckus in the classroom, the naughty kids or whatever, they would see me behaving like that and that was very foreign to them, so they'd call me names for it, like, you know, teacher's pet, and I was an easy target basically because I kept my head down more than anything else and I was a little bit different, so I would get picked on. That's it in a nutshell. But it wasn't too excessively bad, I think, because I was so non-confrontational. And if people would say mean things to me like, why don't you brush your hair, and when I tell them that I don't brush my hair because it's curly and if I brushed it it would get all frizzy and weird and I didn't like that, and they would pick on me being like, oh Fionn, you're dirty, you don't brush your hair, what? I wouldn't say anything, I wouldn't stand up for myself, I'd just ignore them and get on with what I was doing, and I guess that kept me out of harm's way for the most part, which is good. I wish I could have been a little braver, but for me it was safest to just ignore them and get on with what I was doing and not let them get to me as much as possible, in the moment at least. So yeah, that's kind of what like the early years of secondary school were like for me. I guess that was the main point from going between primary school and secondary school, was that I lost a lot of confidence and became more anxious and quiet as a person instead of the like weird, bubbly, happy to be out of the norm child that I was before then. That's what that was like. I guess, so yeah, like year 7 and 8, if you know British school structure, year 7 and 8 was the most uncomfortable, I guess, for me in that time period, in the sense of how other kids treated me, but like after a while it got a little easier, because you know, you go out of your like awkward teen phase and you start to come into yourself a little bit more, you know, start wearing makeup a little bit. I dyed my hair red at one point for a little while, and that kind of got me more attention from like the popular kids because they thought my hair was really cool, and obviously I loved my red hair and other people loved my red hair, and that's not super relevant, but it's just an anecdote of how I was being treated at the time. Like, the people around me were more complimentary, even though the best I would get was, you're quite pretty for one of the nerdy group, you're quite pretty for, you know, the geeks and the less cool people. Like, you're not one of the popular crew, but, and you're not one of the just pretty in your own right people, you're just pretty for being a nerd kind of thing. That's the best it would get. But you know, that was better than being shoved over and called a fucking fuzzbomb as I was in like year 7 by a mean girl, so I was happy with that, you know. Yeah, I had good groups of friends in the beginning of secondary school, but I kind of drifted more to a different group of friends towards the end of secondary school, even though I was like still friends with the first group. But as there always is in schools and in friendship groups, there was drama at times, but I always kept out of it. Again, a very, very non-confrontational person, I would avoid it at all costs if I could. But yeah, I had a new group of friends towards the end, and I remember like the latter end of secondary school for the most part in the terms of like a social sense being more of the happiest. But what I will go on to say obviously is that it was around 2013, I guess, where things took a turn more in my personal life and my mental health. So in 2013, my dad had cancer. We found out that he had cancer that had basically consumed his entire kidney, but the lucky part was that it was contained within that kidney, and he had surgery to remove it, and then it was gone pretty much. My dad only very recently had his last scan, and yeah, he obviously, if you know someone or have yourself had cancer, you know that they monitor you for like years and years after, just to be sure. You get regular scans to make sure that there's nothing there, but like basically after he had his surgery, the cancer was gone and it never came back, and he was fine. The whole ordeal was pretty quick and over with very fast, which I guess in a way made it kind of hard to grasp what had happened. There wasn't a lot of time between hearing that he might have cancer to it being gone, so we couldn't really like, I felt like it didn't allow me to get my head around the fact that my dad was ill. But of course, obviously, as you would expect, him being ill did cause a lot of like worry in our family, and obviously we were very, very concerned for his health. It brings up the feelings of like, well, how would I cope if I lost this person? Which of course is terrifying because it's a family member and he was my dad. He's fine now, but he was ill, and the thought of losing him was really, really, really upsetting and stressful. Yeah, so for a while that was happening, it was not the easiest time in the family, but yeah, like I said, it was over with really quick, and he was okay. And then a little while later, I got glandular fever. I don't know where from, but if you know about glandular fever, you'll know how like debilitating it can be, and I really was bedbound for like a whole week, and it took me months and months after that to regain the level of strength that I'd lost, and I couldn't keep food down at all, so I wasn't really eating very much, and my weight obviously dropped pretty rapidly because anything I'd eat I'd throw up. I had a fever all the time, I would be really hot and then immediately freezing. I would need someone to support me to walk me to the bathroom and back because I could not walk by myself. The way in which me getting glandular fever relates to my mental health is that it dropped my weight pretty rapidly from quite normal to like a little bit underweight in the space of just like a few weeks' time, and I think that had a lasting effect because I obviously got a lot of people a bit concerned about me at the time, but people would compliment my size as they do when you get skinny. I got ill with glandular fever and it made me drop my weight pretty fast. I guess I'd never been looked at as the skinny one and like the fragile one, the one that people needed to be careful of and protect. What I hadn't mentioned is that like up until this point I was very, very active. I was a strong girl. I did 9 hours a week of gymnastics on top of an extra like somewhere between 5 and 10 hours of dancing as well every single week, and you know, that made me more of a bulky girl, and I had strong arms and could do up to like 40 press-ups in one go. Yeah, like through gymnastics we'd have to do a lot of conditioning, so I was working out pretty heavily at the time, and yeah, very fit and active person. And insecurities obviously did creep in through taking part in dancing and gymnastics, because for shows and for practice for gymnastics and the competitions for gymnastics and the competitions in dancing, the costumes that you would wear for them were always very tight-fitting and figure-hugging, so you weren't really very, your bodies weren't very hidden. It did always feel pretty exposing, and for the most part I don't think I thought about it too much, but you know, as I was getting older through it, I would be more conscious of the fact that my thighs were really bulky and my arms were really bulky up here. And while I was doing the dancing and gymnastics, I tried not to let it bother me too much, because I knew that my body being strong and meant that it was more bulky a little bit, because that was how I was strong and that was how I could be fit and active and do what it is that I really loved doing. So yeah, that's the way that I was always built. I had thick legs and thick arms, but that was mainly just because they were strong. Yeah. And then when I got glandular fever and I dropped some weight, I also was kept off of my physical activity for the most part. I couldn't do PE for a few months because my liver and spleen or something were enlarged from the glandular fever, so I couldn't do any contact sports in case it like ruptured them. I don't know, pretty weird and scary, but I didn't do PE for a long while and I had to take a break from gymnastics, and I could only do dancing if it was more, you know, light work. I wasn't being too full out. Not only did I lose weight because of the illness, and honestly, because I couldn't move for so long, my muscles already had begun like atrophying. So I was already losing my strength from being ill, but then I further had to lose strength because I wasn't really allowed to even do what I was doing that made me so strong anymore because of the illness, but for like months and months after I was already a bit better. So it was quite a drastic change in my body, and that obviously took a toll on how I thought about it, especially because of how the people around me treated me at the time. But of course I eventually, after being skinny from losing weight from the illness, I gained it back to a healthy weight, but I wasn't really strong anymore. I was just more of a normal young teen, you know? But yeah, I guess I was going to skip ahead to where the real spiral of my eating disorder began, but before that we'll just mention that glimmers of depression were coming in after going through the, I guess, slightly traumatic experience of having a family member be ill and then myself be ill. That did send my emotions out of whack, and it made me more worried about things, I guess. Those things are the only things I can really pinpoint. As a slight recap, 2013 was where the spiral happened, really, for the most part, for my mental health. The main thing that spiraled first was my eating disorder, which the main point at which it spiraled comes a little bit later. Up until this point, glimmers of depression were coming in from the slightly traumatic experiences I had thus far, just taking its toll on my mental health. I don't know, I was worried a lot of the time. I was sad. I didn't feel very good about myself. I guess things just felt like they were spiraling, and that made me more of a, like, even more withdrawn person and a more generally sad person. And obviously since the beginning of secondary school I'd lost a lot of confidence anyway, and I'd never really built it up. So I never really felt good about myself, and I was in a relationship with a boy, I think sometime around this year, and I ended up breaking up with him expressly for the reason that I felt like I was too sad all the time, and I didn't want to bring him down and be a burden on him, or like, I didn't want to make him sad like I was sad, I guess. Because of me, I didn't want to be a problem to anyone, and I guess it also kind of got picked up by my friends. They started noticing, I guess, that I was a little bit low a lot of the time, and one of my friends wasn't very nice about it, and I ended up finding out that he had called me a depressive bitch behind my back to my best friends, who obviously then told me that he'd said this, and that was pretty damn upsetting for me, because I didn't want to be on anyone's radar in a negative way. If I wasn't thought of in good ways by other people, then I'd rather be invisible, and to know that someone had not only noticed that I was down but had made such a negative comment about it really upset me. But yeah, that's just kind of where glimmers of depression were settling in at this point. And then come to around the summer of 2013ish, my sister did a lot of dancing, more dancing than I even did, because she wanted to be a dancer and is now in London at a dance school for contemporary. But yeah, she was originally going to go into ballet, and she did a summer school in Leeds. But because it must have been like 14 or something, she's a year and a half younger than me. Me and my mum went to stay with her for this like week-long intensive, and yeah, that meant we had a fun little weird holiday weekend in Leeds. And the main thing that we did all week was like walk around town, go to the museums, and eat a lot of really nice food. And I had never really like worried too much about food at this point. I was very free about it, you know, like I really liked marzipan, so we'd keep slabs of marzipan in the fridge a lot, and I would often just like cut off a little slice and like eat that by itself. And I do the same thing with cookie dough. I basically eat whatever the hell I wanted when I wanted, not worry about it at all really, because I didn't have to, because I was so active. But you know, I was very relaxed, I was chill about it, none of it bothered me, basically is what I'm saying. So for this week I was not concerned in the slightest about eating a whole large pizza to myself and eating a bunch of lovely chocolates that we'd found at like cute little independent stores. Yeah, I didn't think twice about it, but then I came home and I weighed myself, and I'd seen that over the week I'd gained like half a stone or something, and that's a lot of weight to gain in a week. And looking back on it now, I kind of know that it must have been, some of it was like the massive food weight still in my stomach or something, or water weight. It wasn't all like I'd gained 7 pounds of fat in one go. But seeing that drastic change was like horrifying for me really. I hated it, I hated myself for it, and I just hadn't realised that's what I'd been doing to my body. Like obviously I came home and I noticed that I felt pudgier. I didn't feel great, but it was only when I saw the number that I was really like shaken. And it was at that point that I decided that I was going to lose weight, and I wasn't going to do it in a smart way. I basically only ate like 500 calories of food a day for a whole week, and that obviously brought my weight down really fast after the week away, and I was pretty happy with that. Like, it might not have been as bad eating that little for a week if I'd have stopped there, but the problem then persisted. I got into the habit of restricting what I ate a lot for a long time, and yeah, that obviously started making me lose weight more and more again. And this is after I'd gained the weight back after being ill and gained the weight from the week in Leeds. I just started plummeting, and you know, it was making me happy, it was making me feel more controlled. I liked it, but it obviously became an obsession. I was obsessed with food and counting all the calories and making sure I ate as little as possible, and seeing the number on the scale to go down every single day or every few days. You know, like how long I'd go between having any form of chocolate or bad food. I was proud of it, I enjoyed it, but it was becoming a problem, and I didn't really realise. The people around me, obviously, like my parents and the people I knew at dancing, would make comments about me losing weight and being concerned about me because I was starting to look too skinny, and they would say that to me and I would just feel confused, because I knew I was losing weight, but to me it was me trying to get to a size that was more normal or more beautiful, or what I like, just more what I wanted to look like. But the people around me were telling me that I was too skinny and I was getting underweight, and they were worried about me, but it didn't make sense in my brain because I was starting to feel less fat, but I wasn't feeling skinny at all. I didn't understand what they were telling me. They just seemed very foreign, or as if they were, I was getting it into my head that they were kind of lying or twisting the truth to stop me from losing more weight, which is what I wanted to do. So I thought they were kind of out to get me instead of what they actually were, which was just worried about me. But yeah, the restriction continued for a long time, but eventually my body was going into survival mode and cravings would go haywire, which meant that I would have episodes of binging, and this would happen kind of once a week regularly for a while. I'd binge, I'd eat a lot of food in one go, and I tried a couple of times even to throw it up, but it never worked for me. I couldn't do it for whatever reason. I guess in a way I'm thankful for that, because that saved me from a whole different set of problems that I may have had if that had have worked, and I'd have made that a habit. But yeah, the binging would then lead to me feeling horrific and bloated and immediately like I'd gained £1 billion in one day, and then that would set the restriction cycle up again, and you know, it'd be binge and restrict and binge and restrict and binge and restrict to try and make up for the binging. The restriction would get worse and worse and worse, and I just really was not happy. I didn't like myself, I didn't like how I looked, and I was trying so hard just to feel better about myself and about my body, and I was doing whatever it took, whatever I felt like I needed to do to feel that way, but you know, it probably just caused more stress on my brain and on my body, and that obviously just made me more anxious and sad than ever. I wouldn't be able to eat at school anymore, really. I would have an orange sometimes if I ate at all, and that would be it. And it became a big problem eating in front of people, because I just never wanted people to see me eat, and you know, in my head, them seeing me eat would mean that they would immediately think I was fat, and I couldn't have anybody thinking I was fat. There was one day, basically, after this, that I probably binged the night before or whatever, and I woke up in the morning for school and I couldn't stop crying, and even as I walked out of the house to start walking to school, I was crying and I couldn't stop crying, and I felt absolutely terrible, like just so shitty about myself, and as if there was just no hope anymore. And my mum put her foot down at this point, and she said, well, if you can't stop crying, and then, you know, I don't know what's really going on with you, but I'm going to book you a doctor's appointment, and you're going to go to the doctors and you're going to talk about it, and we're going to get you some help. So it was at that point, again obviously the very same day, I stayed home from school, and I went and spoke to a GP for the first time about everything, about how I felt like my life was just consumed by food and thoughts of food and my body image and trying to lose weight, and they weighed me, of course, and at this time I was just above underweight, I think. So not really at a too dangerous point, but yeah, I had been losing weight way too rapidly to get to this point, and yeah, the doctor obviously decided that I would be referred to CAMHS under the eating disorders team. So that's kind of where me seeing any form of like help or treatment for my mental health happened, and it was, yeah, under the eating disorders team, and I would have weekly appointments with them for a while with a woman called Rebecca, I believe. I'd get taken out of school for it, but that kind of steadily got better after a while, and I was doing okay. I gained quite a bit of weight before I'd even gotten to my first appointment with CAMHS, but at CAMHS we like talked over everything, and I started to unpick why I was using food to control everything. Me and my mum worked out meal plans to try and get me to eat like a balanced and organised diet, like to make me feel like I was eating enough day to day, but to stop the binging as well. I would try and tackle fear foods at this time, like have whole tubs of Ben and Jerry's or whatever. But yeah, I gained weight, and you know, the eating disorder got significantly better. Fast forward to year 11, I did pretty well on my GCSEs, 6 A stars, 4 A's and a B if you care. But yeah, like over that time I got quite a lot better after seeing CAMHS for a while. I still struggled with having lunch at school, and even on like my shirt signing day, which is where when you're in year 11 and you leave secondary school, sometimes the year 11s will have people around the school sign their shirts and, you know, have a little party in the middle of the quad and then go out to dinner afterwards or whatever. And when me and my friends went out to dinner to Pizza Hut after shirt signing day, they all had pizzas, of course, but I didn't order anything. I just had Coke, and you know, that was still pretty sad, but yeah, I was doing a lot better, but clearly I still had some issues with it because I still didn't really feel able to eat properly in front of friends or eat like significant amounts in front of friends. Yeah. It's getting dark. Because I've lost natural light, it's not going to be as good quality, but so yay. Is that okay? It'll do, it'll do. Eating disorder, better, but I still had lasting issues from it, like not really knowing how to handle lunch and eating in front of friends, but I was okay, gained a lot of weight, I was fine. Then year 11 ends, which is the end of secondary school, and that meant that, for me, I was going to go off to a new college because I wanted to break out of the mould that I'd been kind of stuck in throughout secondary school, which was the quiet, anxious girl who didn't really speak much and who had had all of these problems towards the end, that I wanted to try and have a fresh start and get everything better and get everything on a really good track is what the plan was. And at this point I was still dancing, but I hadn't really gotten back to gymnastics yet. But I decided around this time that I was going to try and get back to gymnastics because it had been a long while. I'd had the break that I needed to have, but because of myself spiraling into like the eating disorder, I couldn't really go back at the time because it just wouldn't have fitted with my mental health. Beginning of college, I decided that I would start gymnastics again because I really, really loved it. I wanted to be the strong girl that I was once again, and you know, just start building a better relationship with my body and, you know, all of that kind of stuff, and get back to what I love. And I started college and it was obviously very, very difficult for me because I'd become quite a socially anxious person over the past number of years. So it was a very scary thing thinking about making a whole new group of friends, but you know, I managed to do it and I found some really, really good friends and that was all good. But it was obviously, if you've watched one of my other videos, I'm not going to go into it too deeply because I made a whole video on this topic, but it was at this point that I met the person that I was in a bit of a toxic relationship with, and that sent my mental health on a spiral all over again. And more detail of that is in the video from before, but the salient points, I guess, from that experience are that I spiraled when I thought I was going to have a chance for everything to get better. Everything got a lot worse than it ever had been before. The thing that wasn't too much affected was my eating disorder. I managed to stay a healthy weight for the most part throughout college, but I became the most depressed that I'd ever been so far because the relationship with him really, really took its toll on me, and in a lot of ways. I had a very mild history of self-harm up until this point. When I'd had, you know, bits of depression starting back in 2013, there would be the odd time that I would try hurting myself to see how it would feel because I needed to feel something, but it wouldn't ever be. Any of the self-harm from that time did not leave any lasting scars. It was just once in a blue moon I'd feel like I needed to do it and then I'd do it, but that would be it, and no one really knew that it was happening. I had a couple friends that I would talk to about it, my two best friends at the time in secondary school, and when I did end up going to CAMS for my eating disorder, they obviously asked if I'd had any history with self-harm as well, and I obviously admitted to them that there had been odd little occasions of it, and I did think about it, but yeah, up until the beginning of college it was not very severe, I guess. It was very, very mild, at least as far as my overall experience with self-harm has been. It was on the less serious side, but obviously the fact that thoughts of self-harm were in my head at all is serious in and of itself. I do know that, and I'm not trying to belittle that at all. But yeah, when I went to college, of course I was trying to get better, but I had a history with things already, at least a little bit, and I was vulnerable, and this person definitely took advantage of that. At least that's how it felt to me at the time, and yeah, I was at that point because of I don't know how to put this, but I started self-harming worse than I had up to yet, which, like, I do now have scars from that are still here with me. But yeah, it was generally just a very, very difficult time. My mum knew that he was bad for me, and she could see that I wasn't, she didn't know that I was really like hurting myself at this time at all, but she could see that the relationship that I had with him was causing me to change a bit, and I'd tell her about some things to do with the relationship with him, and I'm not going to go into that. And yeah, I was getting pretty depressed. My first year of college, my AS level results were a lot lower than they should have been because I had been struggling quite a lot, and to the point that I would lock myself in bathroom cubicles rather than go to lessons sometimes because I could not handle it. Sometimes I would even self-harm in the bathroom cubicles at college. I was so anxious sometimes that I would, having locked myself in these bathroom cubicles, stay in there for at least an hour. I was in there long enough, basically, to give you an idea, that the automatic lights would turn off while I was in there because no one was walking around out in the bit where the sinks were, and I was just in a bathroom stall, sat on the floor, feeling all the things that I was feeling, which were obviously horrific, and the lights would turn out on me. So I'd have to get out of my cubicle just to turn the light back on, and then I'd just go back in and keep hiding from everything. On my breaks from lessons, instead of hanging out with friends, I'd started just spending a lot of time by myself. The building was set up that there was like a set of stairs on one side and then there was a set of stairs on the other, and the whole college was like 3 or 4 levels high, and you could get between the levels by going up and down these stairs. And a kind of, I guess, eating disorder habit that I had at the time was that I didn't really feel like I could relax, and so instead I would walk up and down these stairs and across the hall, and up and down the stairs and across the hall, and up and down the stairs and across the hall, and I would just do that repeatedly on my breaks instead of like hang out with friends. And I obviously knew that like some people that would hang out in certain locations, if they saw me continually passing them on my way around on my weird little I need to exercise, I can't relax, I have to burn calories, walks around college would just be thinking like, what is this girl doing? Why is she just, like, I just saw her 10 minutes ago, why is she walking by again? But I had to do it, so I did. Yeah, and the next significant event, I suppose, in the story is that the depression got to a point, and the battle with the relationship that I had at the time got to a point where, okay, if you can't tell, I'm a little bit sick. I have been for the past week. I had filmed the entire video, but for some reason I lost the end of the footage. So yeah, we'll just keep going. So in 2015, the relationship I had with this boy was very, very toxic. He was manipulative, he lied, emotionally abusive in a lot of ways. He had his own struggles though, so I wouldn't blame it all on him. I could have ended up declining in this way if I hadn't been in the relationship with him. Anyway, we don't know, but obviously I think that the relationship was a part of it. It definitely didn't make things easy to deal with, and yeah, my mental health plummeted quite a lot. So yeah, it plummeted to the point in 2015. This was in February. I know the exact date, I won't say the exact date, but I had been falling out with my mum because I wasn't doing very well and capable of explaining really what was going on with me, and it made us argue. I left the house, I got what I needed, and I took an overdose. And my cat's here with me, which is probably good because it's emotional support. But yeah, it happened. I took an overdose. I stopped partway through and called my mum, who took me to the hospital, A&E, to make sure that I was okay. And then they emergency referred me to CAMS. I do think I explained all of this. That was a pretty low around the same time. Obviously, self-harming was the worst it had been yet. I was struggling to handle doing my A-levels at the same time as suffering with my mental health, missing classes, not really sleeping much, all of the things that I've already discussed. So my first year of A-levels, my results didn't come out as well as I would have liked them to, which led to a second year of college after I'd got myself a little bit better, cut things off with that boy. I still had to face him in a lot of lessons in my second year of college. Not in a lot of lessons, but I think he was in my maths class, so he was there. I couldn't really ignore his existence, he was there, but I had cut ties with the friendship for the most part, cut ties with the relationship for definite, and I knew that I wanted to get into a good uni, and if I was going to get into a good uni, I needed to drastically improve my results for my first year of college. It's a bit difficult to explain, but the results from my first year of college were not good for me, but they weren't bad enough that they would let me reset the year, despite what had been happening. So I couldn't redo my first year of college, and I had to make it all better on the second year of college. So I ended up retaking a bunch of my exams from my AS levels, whilst doing everything from my A2s as well. I basically resat the entirety of maths, AS, as well as doing maths A2, so I kind of did the entire maths A-level in 1 year because I had to reset everything. But I did exactly what I intended to. My mental health got steadily better. I wasn't seeing the CAMS worker that I didn't really get on with anymore, because if I hadn't explained this, she kind of let me fall through the net, cancelled a lot of appointments with me, saying that she was prioritising her other patients, or like she'd say, I can't do next week's appointment because I have to go and visit this other girl who's really, really poorly and she's in hospital. And I totally respect that there are other people that definitely have it worse. But I had it bad enough that I needed to be seen weekly by somebody who I could talk to and help manage my mental health and recover it. And she didn't have time for me. So that eventually kind of fizzled out. I fell through the net of CAMS and I never went back. Nothing really happened out of that. I discussed it with the wellbeings team at my college in my second year, and they got in touch with CAMS and they were going to maybe get me back seeing CAMS. But I was 18 at this point. I was about to go to uni after college. That was the hope. So I didn't really want to be under a child services, and I didn't really trust them anymore, given what my last CAMS worker had been like. Yeah, people have different kinds of experiences with different mental health services. My experience with CAMS in the first instance that I went was fine. The woman I had was supportive. Hello, do you want attention? It's just my cat, sorry. The woman I had did help me through my eating disorder problems, and she listened to me and they helped me get better. Nothing was anywhere near as problematic as the second time that I saw CAMS, because I had wanted to end my life. I had persistent suicidal ideation for the months and months after that. But the second CAMS worker did not take that seriously in the slightest. She didn't really help me. She prioritised her other patients over me, and many appointments with her were cancelled, so that didn't work out. But yeah, back to the timeline. My second year of A-levels, I improved my grades a heck of a lot. I ended up falling just short of the grade I needed to get into the university that I ended up going to, but they still took me, and I was ridiculously proud of myself for that. I'm not going to give you like my entire A-level results. Basically, in my first year of college, A-level, my maths was at a C, and I had failed one of the modules. And in my second year of college, I pulled that C up to an A-star, and that failed module I got 100% on. So I of course I was proud of myself. I'm allowed to be proud of myself. That is an incredible improvement, and you know, that took so much hard work and the determination of getting to where I wanted to go, which was to uni, is what got me through that. And yeah, I did decently well and I got to uni. The next thing I guess that happens in my life is that, you know, it's time to go to uni. Going to uni, most people move out of their family home and they go to live on campus in what they call halls here in the UK, and that's what I was planning to do. I had requested the cheapest halls and I managed to get the cheapest halls, which was great, so that I didn't have too much of a burden financially on how much my halls cost. So yeah, I was going to uni, and moving out of your family home and going to live by yourself is one whole difficult thing, but you also know that you're gonna have way more difficult course material to be learning and a heavier workload than I ever had over A-levels to do once I get to uni and do my first year, which is how it all transpired. I move out of my family home, and it's really difficult because I miss my family, I miss my parents, I miss my sister. They come and visit like every couple of weeks in my first year, but I didn't get to see them as much as I did. And doing physics at a Russell Group uni in the UK wasn't an easy ride. Just because you're in your first year doesn't mean that they took it easy on us. They landed us with like several problem sheets to do every single week, and we had to get those in. We had labs and many lectures. It was a busy schedule, and you had a lot to like keep up with every single week, which was particularly overwhelming for me. Obviously I was prepared for everything to be hard, but I wasn't prepared for how hard it would be. So everything kind of got pretty overwhelming. You know, I had to manage my personal life, like making sure that I got all my groceries and cooked for myself, that I had any social interaction, and that I kept going to my lectures and getting the work done that they needed us to do. So it was pretty overwhelming. First year is kind of where my eating disorder took another big spiral, and because I had moved to uni, I had complete control over whatever I bought and brought into my kitchen to eat. I was the only one deciding what I had, and I had this big obsession with keeping my budget low. I wanted to spend as little as possible every single week as I could, and that meant that I just wouldn't eat very much. I'd buy the cheapest things that I could, which was typically like low-calorie soups, and that would be the majority of what I ate. I ate a lot of soup in my first year, and I ate a lot of bananas. I would get hungry and have the cravings that you get when you're restricting, but because I refused to let myself buy in any of the sugary things or the high calorie things, the binges would happen on things like bananas, and I'd have like 10 bananas in one night, which is significantly less caloric as some other things were, so even the binges weren't helping to raise my intake and balance out the restrictive days. So as you can imagine, my weight did plummet quite quickly. Even 2 weeks into going to uni, my parents dropped me off, and when they saw me, when they visited 2 weeks in, they were already noticing my weight drop, and every time they came they would see it fall more and more and get concerned for me. But I wasn't really fussed. I was just trying to manage everything all at once and juggle everything, and making sure that I ate enough wasn't a priority. And And I was quite happy that I was losing weight, because those eating disorder thoughts had come back and taken a hold, and they decided that I wouldn't be desirable unless I kept dropping my weight. And you know, you're meeting all these new people and trying to make new friends, and in my mind, if I ate too much one day and I felt bigger, no one was going to like me, no one was going to want to be my friend. Not that I cared too much about meeting people for romantic interests, but in my mind, if I looked any bigger than I wanted to with the plummeting weight, then no one was going to fancy me, no one was going to take any mind or any interest, and I was going to just be gross and disgusting, if not invisible. So I lost a lot of weight fairly quickly, is what happened in my first year of uni. Since my first year of college, self-harm had calmed down like a heck of a lot, and I wasn't really doing it for a long time actually. I don't think I can't remember, but I don't think I harmed throughout my second year of A-levels for a long time into my first year of uni. That wasn't something I was suffering with either. It was all consumed in food and my body, and walking miles and miles and miles instead of eating the right amount of food, because I felt like I had to counteract the number of bananas I'd eaten that day, or whatever the hell, you know. I was just, yeah, I was overwhelmed because of everything in my personal life that I had to deal with, and I took that out on food. I controlled my diet too heavily, and I went out on ridiculous long walks even if it pissed it down, and I came back soaked and drenched like a drowned rat. That was how I controlled everything. And I actually ended up doing okay my first year of uni. I ended my first year of uni on a 2-1, which I was decently proud of. But yeah, throughout my first year of uni, most of the control was on food. I think I had tiny instances of self-harm that nobody knew about, because I think I only ever harmed on my legs at this time. And no one would ever see that, or would have too much of my body exposed, basically. Like, nobody knew that was happening, and it was just a tiny thing that I did intermittently, probably as punishment for a bad grade or a binge or whatever the hell. But yeah, it got difficult, and I eventually had to contact the mental health services at my uni, go to the doctors, have them keep checking my weight, I had a lot of blood tests in first year, and they found that I had vitamin D deficiency. I don't know whether that was because of my poor diet choices, or whether that was just a problem that was mounting over time. But yeah, I had a lot of blood tests to make sure that my bloods were okay. I'd see them and they'd weigh me. I'd see the wellbeing services, and they got me linked up with they called it a mental health mentor, which was somebody I could see weekly or whatever, to help me manage my mental health alongside the work that I had to do through uni. I had to go sign up for DSA, which is Disabled Students Allowance, so that they could fund me seeing the mental health mentor person that I saw. So yeah, that's one thing that I will say, just like side note from my story, is if you're struggling with your mental health at all, if it's making your studies difficult, make sure you speak to someone, because there are things that they can do. Like at uni, you can sign up for DSA, and there are different services that they can give you. When I did that, I got a bunch of software for free from my laptop to make things easier. Say if I was feeling particularly depressed and writing things out would be difficult, they gave me dictation software. If I was feeling, again, just low and finding it difficult to focus, if I couldn't read through written notes myself, they gave me software that would read it out to me. They gave me software that made mind maps. And these are little things, they're not drastic things. Obviously the main thing I think I got the DSA for was to make sure that they could give me someone to help manage my mental health alongside doing my work. But these little things did help as well, and they could make the difference between you not being able to do your work at all and getting little things done, you know? It's important to be aware that those things are in place. I know there's a lot of flaws with making sure that people have enough support for their well-being throughout their studies, because it is very, very hard studying a degree or studying whatever while you're also struggling. But there are things that some people can do, and I would stress to you that it's a good idea to have a look at what your university does offer. Oh, sorry, I know I sound disgusting, but I'm still getting over being sick, so... But I want to get this video done and get it out, if not today, tomorrow, so I apologise. But yeah, first year of uni, I didn't do too bad. Obviously, my eating disorder spiralled and I got quite underweight for a little bit. They referred me to an eating disorder service when I went to the doctors about this, but it didn't really work out going to that, because there's kind of an issue when you're at uni as well. If you live in a different place from where you go to uni, so you're home with your family and you're home at uni, if they're in completely different places and you go home for the summer to your family, then if you're trying to get services in the place that you're at uni, if you're just figuring that out and it comes to summer, they're going to tell you that, okay, well, we can't really give you any support while you're in this whole different place over the summer, so you'll just have to sign up again when you come back for your next year of uni. So it kind of all fizzled out because of that, and I did end up gaining the weight back eventually. I find it a lot easier to manage food and making sure I eat enough when I'm at home, because I feel safer there, and you know, my parents are the ones dealing with the money and what is kept in the house, and if I need to, they can make me the meals if that's difficult to sort out for me. So I did end up gaining the weight over that summer, and yeah, that wasn't too bad for me. Obviously it was a very difficult year, and whilst I was doing my first year exams, the mental health mentor lady that I had, her name was Tracy. She was, I loved her, she was amazing. She really helped me get through those very stressful few months. She was telling me, because I just wasn't doing well throughout my exams, I won't lie to you. It was trying to do exams whilst struggling with your mental health is even worse. Studying is bad enough, but then if you have exams and the stress of that, and making sure that you get all the work you need to done, or the revision that you need to done in your own time, going to an exam, performing to the best of your ability, is pretty stressful and hard to deal with. Anyone who has to take exams knows that. So yeah, when I'd see my mental health mentor throughout that time, she would look at me and think, Fionn, you know, you could just sit this out. You need to get better. You're depressed, you're underweight, you're not eating right, you're not happy, you're stressed. Maybe this is not the right time for you to be doing important first year of uni exams. And I would tell her that I had to do it. I had to do these exams. I had to do the best that I could. I couldn't sit them out, because if I did, then hasn't the whole past year been a waste? Blah 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 blah. Sometimes I think about what Tracy said to me and I think maybe I was crazy, maybe I should have just taken the break where I needed to take the break, because I wasn't doing well. I was in a dangerous situation. If I had continued to plummet my weight further and further and further, I could have ended up in hospital where they'd forced me to gain the weight. If I'd have got any more depressed, I could have started hurting myself worse again. We don't know, but I had this little fire in me that I had to finish. I had to finish the year. It was just a few weeks. I had to get through it, and I mean, somehow I did. And Tracy would look at me and just call me stubborn because I wouldn't sit back and take the break, and I just had to keep going. And I think she thought I was crazy for it, but she supported me through it anyway, and I thank her a lot for that. And I'm quite sad I didn't get to continue the support with her through my second year of uni, but I loved her and she got me through a difficult first year. But moving on, yeah, second year of uni, gained a lot of weight, like I said, and it was at this point, the start of second year was tricky, because if you've seen one of my other videos, it was at this time I was kind of struggling with my sexuality, coming to terms with the fact that I liked girls, but having this really amazing boy also interested in me, and I was interested in him, but I was worried that I wouldn't know who I was if I didn't get to experience anything with a girl and instead got into a relationship with him. So that was something I was battling with, as well as, you know, an increased level of difficulty from first year in the workload, because that's what happens every year, it gets harder. I was struggling with that, and it kind of, yeah, as I said I might have said in the sexuality video, if not I might be making a video about how me and my boyfriend got together, so I'll explain it more then. But we had a bit of a sticky, nasty situation, and I thought I was going to lose him, basically, and that upset me more than I can describe. And yeah, basically, I don't know whether it was all to do with all of these things or whether I was just going through a down episode through my depression, but I went back to the doctors and they increased my meds, I think. I think maybe when I went to the doctors in first year they put me on meds for the first time, fluoxetine, and then they increased it around this time as well because I was suffering. I was just not feeling very good at all. I don't know how to put it any other way. I can't really remember what I was thinking in this time besides terrified that I would lose this person that I cared for so much, and angry at myself for messing up and just not knowing who I was at this time. Other than this happening, not long after, me and him got together and I started what has been, you know, the most wonderful relationship. Like, he is my partner in crime and I love him, and he supports me through everything. He's seen me at my most ugly states and he has kept with me, which is incredible. He's an incredible person and I will always love him and support him for supporting me, and I care about him ridiculously. I'll stop being happy about my boyfriend. But, you know, second year, that's where we got together. First year, I'll backtrack a little bit here and say that first year, because I have social anxiety problems, and I had to move to a new place and make a whole bunch of new friends, that was difficult because I spent a lot of the time cooping myself up in my room instead of speaking to the people that I live with or the people in my course, so it was pretty difficult. I isolated myself a lot. I guess, like I said, my eating disorder was the prevailing problem in my first year, but it was also the social anxiety that was a big issue because it made me feel very alone, and I just struggled very much being able to socialise with other people and make a good impression, and I just worried too much about everything to connect with people properly. So throughout first year that was one of the big difficult things as well, and come to second year my boyfriend had managed to get really close to the people on our course, so he kind of helped me throughout second year to connect with the friends on our course as well. So throughout second year I went to more social events, I hung out with people more, I talked to people more, and yeah, like socially everything got a lot better through second year. Mentally everything got a lot better through second year because I had my boyfriend and he helped me through a lot. We did, however, lose my grandmother, my nan, at the beginning of January, so I was kind of grieving for her whilst having to do important papers at uni, so I didn't do very well in my second year, I will say. My grade dropped a lot, but I think that was because I was just trying really hard to improve all other aspects of my life, improve a lot of other aspects of my life whilst also grieving, and knowing that my family were at home grieving and I wasn't with them most of the time because I had to be at uni doing the work. So my grades didn't work out too well in my second year of uni, and that's just how that happened. But yeah, slowly everything got better. The second year was probably another decent year in terms of mental health. It wasn't too suffocating, and I had more of a support system around me at this time as well, so I handled everything better. Then come to third year, which is the most recent year that I've done, and you know, my relationships with people build further and further. I get stronger and stronger with my boyfriend all the time. He has been living with the people on our course and I go to stay with him a lot, so I start connecting with them more. They become more and more my friends, which, you know, yeah, I start to build connections with people more and feel less like alone and isolated, and like I have these horrible built up walls around me keeping me just like alone and that sort of thing. So that sort of stuff continues to get better, but what gets pretty worse in third year is that the gravity of what third year means. It is the final year, it is the most important year of my whole degree. It takes the most weighting over the other 2 years, so even though my grades suffered in second year, third year was the time to bring it all up higher and make sure that my grade came out the best that it could, despite having it not worked out very well in second year. So it was very important. It would determine in some ways what I could apply for job-wise after uni, because, you know, what am I saying? Some jobs only take people with a first class degree, some jobs only take people with a first class or 2-1 degree, and if you get a 2-2 or lower, then you're getting less opportunities. So I was pushing really hard to get the 2-1 because I wanted to maximise my opportunities, and I knew that I had a lot of work to do to improve on my last year. So it was all very important, and that made it very, very stressful. The course content for the modules that we would take exams on was even more difficult, as I said before. I had a whole final year project to do as well, which was like a very specific topic that we had to extensively research and produce work on, that would then be put into like I can't remember how many page, but like a long report. So it was pretty stressful, and I think my mental health didn't deal with that very well, because I started getting more and more depressed and seeing the doctors a couple times. I think I got my meds increased even further. So at this time, through third year, I was on the acute dose of the meds. I got in touch with IAPT finally, which is the Improving Access to Psychological Therapies kind of place for the area that so I had a couple sessions of therapy, but by the second session with my therapist, things had gotten worse and worse and worse, with harming again, this time more on my arms, and yeah, by only the second appointment with this therapist I got referred to the crisis team instead, because I had also been stockpiling pills, very, very suicidal. Suicidal ideation had been very persistent throughout third year and on and off throughout all the years prior. Honestly, since I was, you know, the beginning of getting depressed, I've been on and off with suicidal ideation, but it got pretty intense around third year and it was switching more towards suicidal intent, because I was just struggling and I couldn't really deal with it anymore, and I wanted everything to end. I felt like a failure. I felt like I was never going to make it through this final year of my degree. If I wasn't going to do good enough in my degree, then I wasn't worth it anyway. Like, why bother? Because my future was non-existent. I felt very, very hopeless, and they referred me to crisis because they figured that I needed to manage my risk more than I needed to have the psychological work done at the time. So basically from then on till all the way through my third year exams, I was under crisis, and my boyfriend drove me to the hospital every week or so throughout that time to make sure that I saw them, and they checked in on me, and we managed everything the best we could to get me through it. All in all, I did get through it. I did my exams even though I was suffering. And yeah, long story short, I got through it. I have my degree now. I did okay. I didn't do amazing, but I did okay. What is amazing in and of itself, and what I am proud of, is the fact that I got through all those 3 years despite having all these difficulties with my mental health alongside it. So what happened with the result is less important to me than the fact that I did that against all odds, you know. I didn't think I could do it. My first year tutor was a bit of a shit and he didn't think I could do it. I didn't even mention, did I, that my first year tutor was quite shitty throughout my, because I had him through first year and second year actually, I think, and he was quite shitty about my mental health throughout the whole time. In first year, when I was struggling and I had to go talk to him about it because he was my tutor, so he was one of the only people that I knew to talk to about it. And he looked at me and was like, "You're not anorexic, are you? You don't look anorexic." Like, are you serious? Like, that's not the best thing to say to somebody who's struggling with restricting their eating and dropping their weight rapidly, who is now already underweight. You don't say that to them. You just don't. Like, I don't think I need to explain that any further. That's not a good idea. He also, when probably at some point through my second year, maybe in my first year, I can't remember, at some point when I had missed a couple tutorial sessions because I couldn't get out of bed in the morning because I was depressed, he looked at me and told me, "No one wants to get up on a Friday morning, do they? No one does. You just have to get up, you just have to show up, you just have to do it, get over it." And I was like, I get what you're saying, but what I'm telling you is that I'm struggling and I'm depressed, and that's why I couldn't come in. Not just because I didn't fancy doing a Friday because it should be the weekend already. I wanted to, no, I couldn't get out of bed. I felt horrific. Don't tell me that. So I ended up having to get a different tutor for my third year, and she was a heck of a lot better, and she was very, very nice whenever I had to talk to her about struggling about things. Yeah, she was a lot better, and I'm glad I didn't have him anymore because he was a bit, he was just shitty. Like, I'll just, that says it all. He wasn't very good with me. He didn't know how to handle my situation. I just don't think he understood mental health problems. And yeah, having him as my tutor was not good for me in getting my degree done, so I had to move. But yeah. But yeah, the long story short, like I said, I got my degree, I did it, I got through it, and yeah, now I have my degree. And where we're at now is, I mean, I've updated you in a couple of other videos about what things are like now, but I've done uni and I need to find a grad job eventually, but it's not as easy as they all make out it's going to be, so it's taking a while for me to find a graduate job, a job for which I have done 3 years of a horrible degree to get, and, you know, have good wages and all of that stuff. I did very recently get a job. That job was a bit of a false start because I was getting really, really depressed, and I took it because it was a job and I needed to get a job eventually and earn money and just do anything to get money. But going to that job made me feel horrific, and I was, in the few days that I was there, I was very, very, very suicidal, and I very nearly just decided I was just not going to do it anymore. So false start with getting that job, but in the week following that I got myself another job, and that is going to start next week, so I'm excited about that and I feel way more positive about that. And I know that I might still struggle with my mental health from time to time. Every facet of mental health problems that I've ever experienced, I know that they rear their ugly heads here and there at any time for whatever reason. But the more that I live on, the more that I go through it and I battle it, the better I am at dealing with these things, and I do my best to have hope for the future, you know? I think things are going to be okay. It just takes time and a lot of effort and a lot of perseverance, and, you know, if you need to take breaks, if you need to have those sick days to recuperate because you feel like you can't breathe and you're overwhelmed, just do it. Just do whatever you need to get through, okay? Because that's what I'm learning, you know. Life's gonna throw a lot of shit at you, but we can get through it and get to the good bits if we just battle on through, you know? Hopefully I don't lose this footage and I can get this all edited for you and put together for a video today or tomorrow. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I know it's a long video, very long video, and I don't know whether you found it interesting in the slightest, but it's there. I told you. I might have missed things, but that's the long and the short of my journey so far with mental health, and I know it will continue, and that is okay. I hope you have a very, very lovely day, or have had a very, very lovely day, and I love you so much. Thank you for listening, and subscribe, like, comment. I'll see you in the next one that will hopefully be more fun or educational or less long.